fight alongside communities of color in this city, that was willing to go along with austerity, that was not really waging the kind of struggle that could transform public education in this city and around the country. It was socialists who played a key role in transforming this union to become the fighting union that it is today. DSA members in West Virginia, and Arizona, and Oakland, and everywhere else where the teacher strikes kicked off. So, you know, socialists have played this really key role in making social change happen in this country over the last century. Now, you have to be a little careful about this. You don't want to think that you guys have, we have all of the answers. I don't know if anybody had the experience of sort of like having a newspaper shoved at them and their finger wagged at them as they were walking into this building. That is not a very effective way to make social change. Just wagging at people and tell them why they're wrong and why they're actually tools of the bourgeois imperialist capitalist order. You thought you were socialist, but actually you're not. You want to avoid that. And socialists, when they made all those changes, all the lists that I just went through and more, socialists didn't do that on their own. It wasn't even a majority of socialists who were involved in those struggles. It was socialists who had embedded themselves in working class fights and did so as good faith actors who want to build up those movements, not just, capture some people to bring into their little socialist grouplet or whatever. They were involved because they knew that those working class fights are how we change the world. Socialists had a special role to play in them, a key role to play in them, but it was as a part of a broader working class coalition. And so, that's what is our duty to build today. As a part of a democratic socialist organization, you can gain practical organizing skills, some of which you've been learning this weekend. You can gain all kinds of political analysis to understand how the world works and how to change it. And you can embed yourself in the working class movement, in unions and racial justice fights and the Green New Deal movement and all of that. And through doing that, we know from history and we know from our contemporary state that you can change the world. And so that's a good reason, and that's a good enough reason to me about why you should, join and stay in a socialist organization in YDSA and DSA, because we have this special role to play in changing the world. But I also want to say that it's not just something that you should do because it's the right thing to do, and because you can accomplish, that we can accomplish all kinds of things together. It's not just an intellectual argument of like, yes, I have discovered the proper lever to push to change the world, and so I will thus keep pulling that lever. That's important, but it's also the fact that being a part of a socialist organization and being, dedicating yourself to socialism for the rest of your life is an incredibly rewarding and enriching way to live your life. You will form deeper friendships that are forged in struggle alongside comrades who are just as dedicated to changing the world as you are. You'll feel alive. You will feel connected to other socialists in YDSA and DSA and around the world who are living and dead, past, present, and future. It will be a more passionate and enriching way to live your life. You won't get rich, you won't get a lot of fame, maybe you'll get some followers on TikTok or whatever, but chances are good that you're not going to find it to be the path to fame and fortune. But it is a path to leading the most rewarding and enriching life that you can, and you will meet people from around the world, around the country, and you will form deeper and more lasting friendships through engaging in struggle than you could probably any other way, and there's no other way that I would live my life, and I hope that that would be the same for you, that you won't regret putting yourself into those struggles and dedicating yourselves to that way. So let's throw ourselves into the Bernie campaign. Let's get Bernie Sanders elected. Let's throw ourselves into the campaigns in our cities and in our campuses. But I also want to encourage everyone to make the decision here this weekend to dedicate your lives to winning socialism, to being a part of the socialist project for the long term, and to dedicate yourself to the people who are in this room and to the other people who are in YDSA and who are in DSA, and to that long and noble tradition of socialism. If you do that, I promise you that you will not regret it.
bring it back to what you all are doing. You know, we've all, 250 or so of us, have come together as young socialist organizers, and tell you a little bit about, like, I guess, how I came to this movement. So I started organizing for Bernie at my school, NYU, back in 2016, and I didn't know a thing about organizing. I didn't know how to run a meeting, or how to canvass someone and convince someone to vote for anyone. I didn't know how to keep a membership list, any of that. But I went in blind with a group of my peers, knowing two things. I knew that Bernie's message was something profoundly different from anything we had seen in our lifetimes, in hundreds of years in America. And I knew that my peers and I had a fierce passion to win a better world. And like I said, I didn't know the first thing about organizing, but that motivation kept me going anyways. My comrades and I took that motivation and we ran with it. We ran to our neighborhoods where we registered voters in public housing. We ran to our dorms where we talked to our peers about getting engaged in activism. We ran to town halls where we learned about the hardships of our friends and our neighbors and how a more just world would change their lives. And unfortunately, that 2016 campaign didn't end up going how we thought it would. And while my comrades and I were commiserated together for a little bit, we also didn't lose that spark. We kept organizing for fossil fuel divestment, for justice in Palestine, and much more, because there's a lot we need to win at this point. So as students, we began organizing beyond Bernie. We first coalesced around his message of universality and of justice for the most marginalized in society. And we also coalesced around the idea that we should be fighting. You know, he had this not me, us message. He's like blasting it definitely more during this campaign, but he also talked about it in 2016. And that really resonated with a lot of us at NYU, and I'm sure a lot of people in this room. I know that because in talking to many of you this weekend, I see the passion and motivation that I felt back in 2016 and still feel. And it might be fueled by a number of things. But I want you all to hone in on that motivation and keep running with it. You know, we have this motivation from the 2020 campaign. We're winning in America right now, which is like such an important thing. Have faith that we're going to keep winning across the country. And like Phil said, that's bringing people out of the shadows and into our organization, into our organizing spaces, who are similarly motivated. So you need to take those people and run with them. We need to run into the primary so we win on our campuses, in our cities, and in our states. But I really want you all to start thinking about how we're going to run beyond Bernie and what you're going to be doing on your campuses and in your communities to do that. We're going to be running straight into sites of struggle. That's where it matters. So we have a lot of sites of struggle that we focus on in YDSA. We have the university, where many of us struggle for college for all. We want to democratize education, make it not just free, not just canceling student debt, but just making it open to anyone, whether they're undocumented, whether they're disabled. We want to make the university accessible for all, and I think that's something that many of us in this room should be fighting for, because Bernie talks about college for all, but he's not going to win it alone. It's going to take all of us. We have the workplace as a site of struggle that all of us know too well, I'm sure. We have the workplace within our campus where we should be organizing alongside workers in our campus. It's very, very important to support campus labor. But we also should be thinking about the future workplaces that we're going to be organizing in. So I'm personally going to be organizing as a nurse in the future. Hopefully to help Bernie and all of you win Medicare for all. But I really, really encourage many of you, all of you, to think about how you can bring this struggle and this fight into your workplace after you graduate. We see an incredible struggle that resonates globally with climate catastrophe. This is something that resonates with people all across the US, all across classes, and even in the Global South, especially in the Global South. We see the difference between how the billionaires are profiting off of our pain and killing our planet, and how we're the ones paying the most for that. So we're going to have to continue to struggle to avert climate catastrophe. So I really, really encourage you all to think about these struggles once you're done with the Bernie campaign on your campus, after the general, after we win, how we're going to keep supporting Bernie and organizing for Green New Deal, College for All, Medicare for All, workplace democracy, and to end all wars. So you can do that through organizing on your campus. You could also be organizing with us nationally on many of our national committees, which I encourage you all to take part in. And yeah, I think that's it.
So I want to ask a little bit, Philip, you mentioned the need to inoculate people against what we know is coming from capital. We know, because we're socialists, that this is what happens, that they don't just, capital doesn't just go, oh dang, we lost this one. I guess it's over. They keep going. And so, can I hear a little bit more about what you think about that? I mean, the task of even winning this election is such a massive one that, you're just like rolling this boulder up this giant hill. And even to get to that point where we can get the boulder, to a place where we can just let it, where it doesn't roll back down immediately, to actually win this election, that's kind of the easiest part in some ways. So how do we prepare people for that, especially at a time right now when hopes are raised really high about Bernie, but also we know that we're coming out of decades of neoliberalism, of social atomization. We have all of our institutions of social solidarity, like labor unions and community organizations, and even like churches, and everything is just really atomized and split and are in decline. And so, given those difficulties, how do we overcome that to do what needs to be done to build that better movement? And I sincerely believe, I didn't sincerely believe it until relatively recently, that Bernie actually could win. He actually looks like he's going to win. But we should talk also about what if he loses, and how do we continue the momentum that we've gotten from this campaign. So how do we inoculate in sort of best case scenario and worst case scenario? How do we continue to build the kind of infrastructure that we need to go beyond him, whether he wins or loses?
I think the simplest version of that answer is what we've been talking about. It is organizing. And organizing it at its most authentic level. In Pedagogy of the Oppressed, the central tenet of it, right, is that we are working alongside our people so that we all become, through this transformational process, subjects and not objects. Objects upon whom history happens to, and subjects who make history. And that long, organic process is the one that will really take hold. If we treat the next few months, as you really alluded to, and I think we've all been doing way better at it collectively, but if we treat the next few months as an opportunity to, as Paulo says, to fill empty containers, right? Or our senator loves Eugene Debs, and who has a great quote about, I don't want to lead you to the promised land, because if I lead you there, someone can lead you out. And so if we treat the next few months as an opportunity to fill these empty vessels, or bring the knowledge to these ignorant folks who do not yet know and haven't seen the light of socialism, then we will lose. So what is required of us is to really, really, really build deeply, and that is what the best of our organization, it is no accident that we are in this building where the spirit of the Chicago Teachers Union and the great organizing that they do and have done and will continue to do is. And so for me, that is the simplest answer. There's no silver bullet to it or no shortcuts. We've got to build authentic, deep relationships with our communities to prepare them for what is about to happen. And another thing I think that we can do over the next few months, and we're all alluding to it, is we need to behave like the ideas that we are talking about are embraced by a wide majority of this country. They are. They absolutely are. Our ideas are no longer counterculture. We have begun to become the culture. And organizations like Turning Point and PragerU and all of these other organizations that are on college campuses, we need to begin to they are the counterculture, right? That is why they are extremely anxious and extremely hateful and extremely excitable about their ideas, because they see that the ideas that are built on, frankly, a house of cards with no logic, right, but fear, are beginning to be marginal. And so we need to begin to behave that way. Lastly, you already said it, in my opinion. I think we must remember, that's why I wore the shirt, we've got to remember that we are moved by love, right? And it is because we love that we are so angry and we are so passionate and we are so rambunctious. And we've got to remember that people already know that the sky is falling and the world is burning. They already see it in their checkbooks or the lack thereof. They see it when they're driving 13, 14 hours for Uber and Lyft and coming home. They're seeing it as they go to work and they have to buy their own school supplies as a teacher. They already know. But what we've got to present is a home for them, right? And that they are welcome here, and that we want them here, and that we're going to prepare together for what is to come. Those are the central things that we were able to do, and what continues to happen past my leadership, frankly, in a more robust way with Dream Defenders. That is how in Florida, in Miami specifically, where socialism is, the word socialism is, you know, a scourge there. It turns you into a pariah. That is how Dream Defenders, Miami YDSA, you know, Sunrise, these organizations have been able to take hold. It is because the age-old saying, people know that you care, and then they care that you know. And so when we approach it like that, like the work is like that, then we're able to build the mental and really the deep bonds that we're going to need to prepare for what is to come. And I've seen that work over and over and over.
Yeah, so I think you just hit the nail on the head there. You know, Sarah Nelson, president of Flight Attendants Union, she said that solidarity is a force stronger than gravity, and that's something we really, really need to hone in on here. You know, we're going to be organized, and we're going to be organized against the strongest forces of capital. They're going to be doing everything they can. They're going to throw everything at us to make sure we lose, and we really, really have to hone in on that solidarity, that togetherness, and continue fighting beyond, like, whatever may happen to us. So I think you put it great, Phil. We just need to stay organized. That's all we really can do here.
I really apologize. I just have one other thing to contribute that I would be hurting myself if I didn't say. I think I'm an artist as well, and the reason that I put that in my bio is because the culture, our music, our songs, our poetry, are the connective tissues throughout generations, and each one of us is spouting out quotes, and they imbue this really great emotion, not just because they make sense, but because they speak to our hearts. And I just want to add, we've got to get to a place, you know, where we chant, but we've got to get back to singing. We've got to get back to the things. A movement should absolutely move. And the greatest revolutionaries, we hear the stories over and over, but the greatest revolutionaries, they were quoting poetry. You know, they were reciting poetry to one another. They were singing songs. I love this story about Bunchy. He was a leader of he was a huge former gang member and leader of the LA Black Panthers. This person had such a, you look him up, he was huge, right? And he struck fear into everybody. One, because he was huge, because people in this country are eternally afraid of black men, but also because he had done some things out in the streets, and so his reputation was earned. And there's this story about him going into a big hall and going into the room, and he had all his guys in black leather and the women in black leather jackets, and it looked like everybody was scared. And he went to the front of the room and he just started doing a poem, and everybody was just blown away. They were expecting something else. But I love that story because I think we've got to remember that that is a key part of what was taken from us with the Council on Cultural Freedom and the propaganda project of the right. And so we've got to reclaim our music, dance as well.
we've been, talking mostly about socialism sort of broadly, except for Kristen talking about YDSA, but I wanted to, if you'll indulge the sort of like, 3 minutes for the old people on the stage to talk about being old. We're being, yeah, you and me, we're the ones.
That old.
We were talking before this, you and me, Philip, about how, you all are in your 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, and we were just talking about where we were when we were 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, and just rest assured, it was a very different place. I was not talking about the structural power of capital and the need to organize. I was doing weird shit, man. I was like dumpster diving and just like playing in punk bands. Shout out to punk bands. Nothing wrong with that. But like I bring this up because it's like I didn't have any sense when I was a college student that. I joined sort of activist projects that were around, but they were small, they were marginal. I didn't really have the sense that I could like change the world. I helped create like a subculture, a tiny subculture that I created with my friends, and that was meaningful to me. But it didn't feel to me, in hindsight especially, that we could actually transform the world with what I was doing. And we're in a very different moment now, where you all are, so far ahead of where we were, and the potential that you all have as people who are incredibly sharp, who are incredibly dedicated to organizing on your campuses, in the working class when you leave school. The potential is just enormous, and in some ways this feels a little grandiose to say, but it really feels like you all are a generation that could just massively transform this country because you all are just so much more advanced and so much more dedicated at a young age. You figured shit out way before we did, and you guys have a lot of time to actually change the world. You don't have to go through all the, Phil, you said you wanted to be a business owner, right, when you were businessman, yeah.
Even worse.
Capital B, capital M, businessman. And so, just like, can you talk about that sense of like the potential that is here that is unique, really, in at least the past half century, if not longer, in folks who are in this room and in your peers back home?
Well, you said it, at 18 I arrived I'm born and raised in Chicago, the south side of Chicago. So I went to Whitney Young, and I was poised really to be the best that Black America could offer in the way that we are taught, especially growing up poor. There's a narrative, and I soaked it all the way in. In fact, as a part of my little introduction, I was a business major in college at Florida A&M. And my introduction was, my name is Philip Agnew. I'm a first-year business administration student from Chicago, Illinois, and I majored in business because I plan to do major business. That was literally my introduction in college, and I said it and did it. I did it everywhere I went, and I was known as like, that little guy who's about to do major business somewhere. Right, and it did work out. It did. But to speak on you all, I do think it begins to sound cliche that, the youth is the future. But I really do believe that we're in a long arc of things, and there have been, our long windy road, if we will call it that, has resulted in, frankly, a generation who has experienced, as you all were younger, I was older. I celebrated and voted for Obama, but you all had an Obama as president. And I talked about this with some comrades on college campuses. You all experienced a world where when I was younger, when we were little, we would say, when I grow up, I want to be the first Black president. And everybody in the auditorium would go, oh, like, that's not gonna happen, and it did, and I bring that up because you all, I believe, and from what I've heard, experienced a dissonance where a ceiling was lifted simultaneously where the floor fell out. And there's a weird, for you all to be coming of age, for some of you, I'm not assuming, but for some of you to be coming of age during that time, you all came to some conclusions quite early. And the level of knowledge and experience that you all have, without being paternalistic, it really is incredible and should give any leftist great hope for what we are about to do, because you all have everything at your disposal to do what needs to be done. The acumen is there, the hold on technology and culture is there, the ability to communicate in massive ways, the heart, the head is there, the feet are there. You all are doing it in ways that I feel just quite proud to witness, and even prouder to actually be able to come tag along sometimes when you all allow it. And so I'm quite excited. And then also, to really bring it home, we were joking earlier, I'm also not going to let y'all outread me or outwork me. So, you know, the fact that there is a knowledge that there is no resting here, that there are, what I heard, a 13-year-old, there are 13-year-olds in this room who are reading, who are immersed in the knowledge, and who are transfixed with praxis. How do I take this knowledge and apply it, the dialectic, right? How do I show how this works in this current context is incredibly exciting, and it is a light under people, a fire under people's ass. And I think what we're going to be able to do together is incredible.
I won't make Kristen talk about how great like Zoomers are. Just take our, me and Phil's word.
Take our word.
Yeah. All right, so we have a bunch of time for Q&A, so we're going to take questions from the audience, and we're going to take 3 questions at a time, and I will ask people to cap. You know, people always groan when people say they have a comment, not a question. I'm actually okay with that, but you have to cap it at 90 seconds, whether it is a question or a comment. So,
That's a good rule.
What's that? Oh, sure, yeah. How about in the front here, right there, and in the back? Yeah, right there, and then right here.
Where we go?
Yeah.
Oh, hi. I'm Brendan from Kansas City, and I was recently in Lisbon, Portugal, hanging out with some activists from Bloco Esquerda, the left bloc, and I asked them for advice on what we need to do. And their biggest piece of advice, and pardon the language here, don't fuck this up. And they were saying that this campaign has such a potential, not just for us, but for them. Do you think they're right that the international ramifications for Bernie winning could transform the left globally as well as domestically?
Yeah, we'll take them once.
Okay. Hi, my name is Arcadia Schmidt. I'm from Loyola YDSA. When we push Sanders through to the White House, what do you envision DSA and YDSA doing to both work with his administration and to push his administration left? Like, he's shown as a candidate that he can be pushed further left on issues that he may not have had the best stance on. So what role do you see us playing in ensuring that we do have actual socialist policies going through instead of just a socialist Democrat power?
And then there's someone in the back.
Hi, my name is Claire Adams. I'm with the Purdue crew. So in my experience canvassing, I realized that it's quite easy to get someone on your side when they already have a little bit of class consciousness, and they can share their struggles with you and say, oh, I'm having trouble paying rent, I'm having trouble paying healthcare. And then you can just go from there and say, okay, blah, 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 get them on your side. But the struggle happens, especially when canvassing for Bernie Sanders, when people are apolitical, especially young people. So do you guys have any advice on connecting with people who haven't yet entered the political sphere? Because especially in Iowa, when we were talking to a lot of students on college campuses, there were people who just did not yet have a platform or ideas that they've really connected with yet. So how do you make people care, you know?
Yeah, these are great questions. So let's answer those 3. So I'll start with the first one, if that's okay. You know, it's a great question about the international ramifications of what